2023, I focused a lot of my time, energy, effort, all of my resources available to me on different forms of trying to help the planet, which means things bigger than just voting with my dollar. But even though this year has been widely focused on community, giving back, volunteering, all those sort of things, my passion always comes back to the things that we buy and the impact that they have on the planet. And that's kind of what I built this whole channel on. If you don't already know that, you should probably hit the subscribe button. And no matter what ways I practice, like community activism or sustainable living, the thing that I always come back to is the fact that the things that we are buying that are unnecessary are having huge impacts on the planet. And as someone who has come from being a hyper consumer and at this point hasn't shopped fast fashion in 10 years, I think I have a lot to say on the matter, and I've learned a lot, and I want to share it with you in case one of your New Year's resolutions for 2024 is to quit fast fashion. I promise we can do it together. I'll give you my little spiel in case you are new here and you don't know who I am. My name is Shelby. I'm a sustainability expert, and I used to be a hyper consumer. When I was in high school, I actually never repeated an outfit, and I won best dressed in my high school as a result of that. Fast forward to going to college as an environmental science major and thinking that I was an environmentalist, meanwhile dripped out in petroleum and never even repeating those pieces. I went to my first environmental science, like intro to environmental science course, and we watched the short documentary called The Story of Stuff, and it literally changed my entire life. The principles in their short little like documentary style informational video, as well as the book, are the foundation of my principles in my everyday life as sustainability, but also like very strong foundation of this channel. I basically embarked on a journey of quitting fast fashion once I learned that, but not just fast fashion. Really, it was a journey of trying to just buy less stuff because I realized what big impact it had on the planet. So specifically when it comes to fast fashion, it always ranks as one of the top 3 polluting industries in the world. It's up there with agriculture and oil. So not really something we should be seeing as like a side mission. This is a huge deal. And I think that probably if you found this video, you know what fast fashion is, but I thought I would give a description of it because that term gets thrown around a lot. And the reason is because most clothing is fast fashion. And for me, there's 3 different ways that you can think of fast fashion, although the term originated because the idea was we would speed up the production and trend cycle. So fashion, a little bit of fashion history for you. Basically, clothing used to come out in 4 seasons, and it was stuff that would take a long time to produce. They were original pieces that took time to draw up, draft, create pieces, and then go back to the drawing board and perfect them. It took a lot longer to make garments, not even that long ago, a couple decades ago. And then fast forward to fast fashion, now we have companies like Shein, the worst of the worst, who release hundreds of new pieces every single day, who don't take the time to go back to the drawing board and perfect an item, people who steal designs and just like really shittily in low quality reproduce them. That's where the term fast fashion actually originates, because it sped up the cycle of not only trends but production as well. So that's the first way you can think about fast fashion, and those are the other 2 things that I think of when I think of fast fashion, which is exploiting people and the planet. So typically fast fashion is all fast producing, and to speed up that process and to make sure that those garments are cheap enough that people are willing to buy garments as fast as they're being produced, people are exploited along the way, not paid fair wages, they're not working in safe conditions, and then there's the impact that that has on the planet, both in the materials that we are extracting from the planet and also in the way that things are produced. So things like discharging water in ways that you shouldn't, not being permitted for certain activities that you're doing throughout the manufacturing, disposing of things incorrectly, and there are all sorts of ways to harm the planet along the way, but that kind of comes with this sped up version of fashion, because we cannot produce as many garments as the fashion industry is producing and protect people and planet. Those things cannot go all together. And so I think it's important to realize that even if a brand has put out something that is a sustainable fiber or it's ethically made, it's impossible to pump out as many garments as so many of these fast fashion places are doing and protect people and planet. And then also, what is sustainable fashion? And there are so many different ways to make fashion sustainable, but I think when we talk about what sustainable fashion is, it needs to be considerate of people and planet. And to me, it's this idea that people are paid fair wages and treated equitably along the whole supply chain, not just at one part of it, because sometimes people will talk about the way their workers are paid in retail and forget about the garment workers, and sometimes these people people are getting, maybe better working conditions and they're really propping up what a big deal that is. Meanwhile, people over here are not allowed to unionize. Like, there's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to the ethics of fashion, but I think truly sustainable fashion considers all of that, and then also the planet. And that can be in terms of like what type of materials are used, textiles, the way that waste is disposed of. If we're using recycled materials, that's a really big thumbs up for me. Organic materials. This video is actually brought to you by the Global Organic Textile Standard, which we're going to talk in depth about. So in my experience, when I quit fast fashion, I didn't quite set out to do that. I just had learned how awful it was, and I didn't want to do it anymore. Keep in mind, at the time I was in college and quite broke, so I didn't have a lot of disposable income to keep up with the way I was buying clothing when I was in high school, when my parents were helping me. And so I just stopped shopping altogether. From what I remember, basically when I watched The Story of Stuff in 2011, I stopped buying new clothing. I didn't go to the malls anymore just for fun. I didn't walk into Target. I wasn't shopping online. I honestly just quit cold turkey, if you will, and I didn't even really think about it. And I think because of all of the pressures on me at the time of focusing on college, that was a whole new era, and not having the money to continue my consumerism habits, that helped me. But I do think that there's something valuable there about just doing a no buy. If you're someone who at this current point is used to shopping fast fashion, shopping often, buying a few pieces every few weeks or so, statistics show that people in the US buy new garments on a very regular basis. I wish I could remember the exact number, but I'll put it here on the screen for you. So I think one of the most impactful things you can do in that case is try a no buy. And I don't know if it's necessarily like you have to go into it with the mindset of I'm quitting it forever, because I feel like sometimes that can give us this like scarcity mindset and drive us in the opposite direction, and we want to make this forever. So I think go into it with a 1, 2, 3, maybe 6 month no buy period of no new clothes. And I think this is the best way to get out of the cycle of thinking that it's normal and okay and like just your everyday normal life to buy new things, to constantly be scrolling like TikTok shop nowadays, like all these new shopping platforms, constantly be online shopping, going to the mall or to Target just for fun. Those are the sort of things that we want to restructure in your mind if that's the way you're currently shopping. And I think when you're doing a no buy period, it's probably going to become a lot more apparent to you the clothing in your closet that you actually wear. So during that no buy period is a great time to take inventory of what you have in your closet, and then over the no buy period, take note of what you're actually wearing. Because when I did this, even long after I had quit buying fast fashion, when I did an inventory of my closet that was mostly secondhand at that point, I realized the things that I was buying as like aspirational outfits, things that you think you're going to wear or you could find an occasion to wear something for, you'll start to realize the things that are worth investing in your closet and the things that probably aren't. At this point, my friends in my life literally will see shirts and go, oh, that's a Shelby shirt. If it's a button-up collared shirt, it's now called a Shelby shirt. If it has some sort of creative embroidery on it, it's a Shelby shirt. And it's taken me years to perfect my style and know that if I see something like that in a store, that is something that will get a lot of wear out of my closet. And during the no buy period, you can learn similar things like that about your closet. And I think even knowing that and trying to figure out what your actual personal style is, what you actually gravitate towards, can be super helpful in this journey, because it then narrows down the things that are even really options for you to buy the next time you are shopping or you decide that you need something. And on the same like thought path, learning to spot when something is a trend and when you are just being like kind of force-fed this trend is really helpful. So it's really important, I think, in my experience, to spot when something is trendy and you're starting to like it because you've seen it so much, but because it's trendy, it won't be cool in a couple months and you won't want to be wearing it anymore, and it actually wasn't your style to begin with. And finding your personal style is something that is actually can be very time consuming and very hard to do. Not something that I would expect everyone on a quitting fast fashion journey to be able to do quickly, or maybe even within the next couple years. It might take more time, but I do think it's important to start analyzing the things around us and what we actually are gravitating towards and what we're just seeing a lot of on the internet, so we buy it. Okay, speaking of the internet, I also think it's really important to unfollow any brands on social media. The fact that fast fashion brands have millions of followers, like, it does make sense to me, but also it doesn't, because we're in a stage of the world where people are so much more aware of the impacts of billionaires, the impacts of fast fashion, and the impacts of marketing on our brains. So like, one of the first things you can do right now, while or after watching this video, is go through the things that you're following on social media and unfollow any brands, and also unfollow any creators who are constantly making you feel like you need to buy something new. And in another breath, you can go follow people who will make you feel good about finding things in your closet and turning them into outfits. I know Carrie Dayton made a video recently styling things from my closet for fall outfits, I think is what it was for. My friend Jasmine, Curly Top on Instagram, she's great. Oh, Climate Diva, I think her name is Summer Dean. She makes great content with sustainable and thrifted fashion, and I think following more people like that will help you, encourage you not to be buying fast fashion all the time, or at least that's their intention. Now, if during this no-buy period there ends up being something that you do need an outfit for, there are two things that you could do that I think would be really good to help you stay on the no-buy and also help you explore other areas of sustainable fashion. One would be to rent an outfit. There are several subscription services. I have used both Rent the Runway and Nuuly before. I do think both of those services are really, really great. And then another option is to swap with your friends. If you have friends or family that you think you could swap outfits for or borrow from, that's a really great solution in this no-buy period and outside of the no-buy period. It's things that I still do to this day. When I need something, I will rent it, and I steal things from my sister's closet quite often. She's not gonna watch this, but I am eyeing her Christmas crew neck currently. The way I think about it is all of the environmental impacts of the fashion piece, or like the sweater that I'm wearing, right? The amount of environmental impact that it had, if I'm only going to wear it once, is kind of massive. But if I'm going to wear it 20 times, 30 times, 100 times, all of a sudden all of those resources get kind of chopped up into those each individual day. And so the cost to the planet per wear becomes less and less. And that's the goal, that we want to be finding pieces that we're going to want to keep for much longer, and not just things that we're going to be bored of in a couple weeks. Now, when you get past the no-buy section and we're trying to buy things again, let's talk about what sustainable fashion is, how to look out for greenwashing, and what the options are out there. Personally, for me, my favorite form of sustainable fashion is secondhand. I am always going to say we should use what's already on this planet first before we consider buying things that are new. And the amount of textile and clothing fashion waste in the world is astronomical. I don't think that you could comprehend the amount of clothing that goes to landfill every single year. And it just makes sense to divert those things from landfill and use what's already here, as opposed to buying new things, even if it's sustainable fashion. That is my stance. It always has been. I've done really, really well of having a almost completely secondhand wardrobe over the years. It's gotten a lot easier with services like ThredUp and Poshmark. I highly recommend. So in the case that you are going to buy new sustainable fashion and you're coming from the world of fast fashion, be ready, because when you are not exploiting people and planet, it does come at a cost. The entire fast fashion production system is only able to be sped up so much and kept so cheap because throughout that supply chain, people and the planet are exploited. There's no way to do that without doing those two things. But that's also why I spent a lot of time talking about finding your style and cost per wear, and finding things that you will want to wear long term. Because if you're going to spend more on a piece, it should be all of those things. It should be something that makes you feel good. It should be something you'll reach for. It should be something you're going to keep long term. Now, how do I know if something is sustainable? Well, here's a hint. If it's in a big box store, and honestly, if it's at the mall, there's a really good chance it's probably not sustainable. Now, there are exceptions, I will say. Now, if you are in a mall and you see the GOTS certified label, that is a good sign, because that means that they are following many standards set forth by this certification. It actually has a pretty rigorous standard that you have to meet to get this certification to have that label on their goods. So the GOTS certified label makes sure that the fibers that are in that garment, sometimes they can be things like mattresses. My mattress has a GOTS certified label on it, but it's making sure that those fibers are organic, so it's not grown with pesticides, which can wreak havoc on the ecosystems where those things are grown. And so that's why I was talking about the supply chain. When brands skip that part of the supply chain, it has impacts on the environment, but it's cheaper for them to do that. So taking that shortcut alone can change what that supply chain looks like. But that's just one of the things about the GOTS certified label, that you can feel good that you're not having those negative impacts on the environment in the supply chain. But the GOTS label can also put your mind at ease for exploiting people, not just the planet, because they also do have social responsibility clauses, standards that they have to meet. When you see that certification, you can rest assured that that garment was created with fair working conditions, as well as reasonable working hours, and making sure that child labor is explicitly prohibited. And the other cool thing, because I keep talking about supply chains, I keep going like this, is that it really is transparent so that you can understand what the supply chain looks like. That GOTS certified label has really great transparency when it comes to all parts of the supply chain, and it makes it really easy for you and me to do our own assessment of the supply chain instead of just people saying terms without any third party certifying it. And the standards to get that certification have to do more with just the fibers being organic, but it has to do with reducing textile waste, reducing the amount of water that is used to grow the crops and to make the garments and the manufacturing process. All the things that go into sustainable fashion, if you see this label, you can rest assured that when you buy that thing, your money is supporting a sustainable brand. And I think it's a really good certification to look out for. But I personally think it's really worthwhile to support smaller, sustainable brands. I can rest assured that my money is paying for something that is ethical and sustainable, and that puts my mind at ease the few times that I do end up buying something new during the year. So as you're on your journey to quitting fast fashion and getting more into sustainable fashion, the Global Organic Textile Standard is actually going to be a great resource for you. I'll leave a link at the top of the description, and you can also, while you're doing your purge of following fashion brands and influencers who make you want to buy stuff, while you're on Instagram doing that, you can go follow the GOTS certified label, and maybe you can learn some new things over there from them. And I have to say that I feel like I've been talking a lot about whose responsibility it is to save the planet and all those sort of things. And is it my responsibility? Is it the corporations? Is it the government? And while all of that conversation is happening, my goal with my life is two things, two reasons that I think sustainable fashion is important. Number one is because I don't want to put money in the pockets of people who exploit people on the planet. I want to give the money that I spend to people who I know would respect me and the planet and people who work in their supply chain. That's the main reason. It's not necessarily because I think when I bought these sweatpants, I was saving the planet. It's I'm going to make a purchase and I don't want it to go towards my vote that I think it's okay to exploit people and the planet. And I don't think it's okay to put more money in the pockets of the most wealthy people in the world. I hope that this inspires you to start your no buy as of right now in the beginning of the year, if you're watching this before the end of the year. And definitely go follow me on Instagram and ask me any questions that you have. I would love to help you, because this is definitely what I'm passionate about, talking people out of buying things that are not sustainable. And if you're new here, you should probably hit the subscribe button. But remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye guys.